Have you ever wondered if the people who gave you life could also be the reason you never truly discovered who you are? It is one of the most uncomfortable questions a person can ask. We are taught that loyalty to family should never be questioned, that love always looks the same, and that becoming an adult simply means growing older. But what if growing older is not the same as growing into yourself? What if the greatest barrier to your future is not hatred, failure, or fear, but an identity you never consciously chose? The first prison most people enter has no walls. It is built from expectations. Long before you learned what you wanted, someone else told you who you should become. You were praised for behaving a certain way, corrected for thinking differently, and rewarded when you fit the role that had already been written for you. Slowly, without noticing, your personality began adapting to acceptance rather than truth. This happens in many families, often without harmful intent. Parents pass on values they believe will protect their children. Traditions are shared. Expectations are formed. Much of this can be loving and beneficial. But sometimes those expectations become so rigid that a person grows into a version of themselves designed to satisfy others instead of discovering their own convictions. One day you wake up and ask a frightening question. Whose life am I actually living? The answer is not always comfortable. Perhaps your career was chosen to earn approval rather than fulfill your purpose. Perhaps your beliefs were inherited but never examined. Perhaps your fears were passed down like family heirlooms, accepted without ever asking whether they belonged to you. Imagine an eagle raised among chickens. Every day it watches those around it scratching the ground, believing that staying close to the earth is the only way to live. No one tells it about the sky because no one around it has ever flown. The eagle does not lack wings. It lacks awareness of what those wings were made for. Many people spend their entire lives living beneath the limits they inherited, not because they are incapable, but because they have never questioned them. Real growth begins the moment you become willing to examine your own identity. You stop asking, "What do people expect from me?" and begin asking, "What principles do I truly believe in? What kind of person do I genuinely want to become?" These questions require courage because the answers may lead you away from familiar expectations. Sometimes creating distance is not an act of rejection. It is an act of reflection. Distance gives you the opportunity to hear your own thoughts instead of only repeating inherited ones. It allows you to separate your identity from the roles you have always played. It creates space to decide which values you wish to keep and which beliefs no longer serve the life you want to build. This does not mean that every family is harmful or that everyone should leave their family behind. Many families provide love, wisdom, and strength that deserve to be cherished. But when expectations consistently suppress your growth, creating healthy emotional or physical distance for a time can become a path toward greater self-understanding rather than an act of disrespect. The goal is never rebellion for its own sake. The goal is authenticity, because becoming your own person does not require hating where you came from. It requires having the courage to examine it honestly, appreciate what is good, and leave behind what prevents you from becoming the person you are capable of being. The greatest transformation begins the moment you stop living someone else's identity and start discovering your own. And that journey naturally leads to understanding why real love should never require you to lose yourself. Once you begin discovering your own identity, another difficult truth begins to reveal itself. Many people confuse love with obedience. They believe that proving their love means constantly sacrificing their peace, ignoring their boundaries, and carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. Over time, they begin to believe that losing themselves is simply the price of being loved. But real love was never meant to erase your identity. Healthy love allows people to grow. It does not demand that they become smaller. In many families, love and control can become difficult to separate. Sometimes advice slowly becomes pressure, concern becomes constant criticism, protection becomes over-control. A desire to stay connected becomes guilt whenever someone chooses a different path. These patterns are not always intentional. Often they come from fear, old wounds, or beliefs passed down through generations. Understanding this does not require bitterness. It requires clarity. Imagine holding a young tree with ropes because you want it to grow straight. At first, the support is helpful, but if the ropes are never removed, the tree can no longer grow naturally. What once protected it eventually begins to limit it. People are no different. Guidance is valuable. Control is limiting. There comes a point in every mature life when decisions must come from personal conviction instead of constant permission. If every major choice is still shaped by fear of disappointing others, then your life is no longer being directed by your own principles. Many people remain emotionally exhausted because they carry responsibilities that do not belong to them. They feel guilty for setting boundaries. They apologize for needing time alone. They ignore their own emotional well-being to keep everyone else comfortable. Eventually, something inside them begins to disappear, not because they stopped loving others, but because they stopped caring for themselves. There is a profound difference between compassion and self-sacrifice without limits. Compassion allows you to care deeply while still protecting your own well-being. Endless self-sacrifice, however, often creates resentment, exhaustion, and emotional emptiness. You cannot continually pour from an empty cup. Real strength is not measured by how much pain you silently tolerate. It is measured by your ability to love without abandoning yourself. Healthy boundaries are often misunderstood by those who benefited from your lack of them. When you begin saying no, some people may believe you have become cold. When you choose peace instead of constant availability, they may accuse you of changing. In reality, you are not becoming less loving. You are becoming more honest. Boundaries are not walls built to keep love out. They are doors that allow respect to enter. The healthiest relationships are not built on fear, guilt, or obligation. They are built on mutual respect, honest communication, and the freedom for each person to become who they are meant to be. Love grows stronger when it is chosen freely, not demanded through emotional pressure. Creating distance, when necessary, should never come from hatred or revenge. It should come from wisdom. Sometimes space allows emotions to settle, perspectives to change, and healing to begin. Sometimes it becomes the very thing that protects both your peace and whatever healthy relationship can still remain. Remember, choosing yourself does not automatically mean rejecting your family. It means refusing to reject yourself in order to keep everyone else comfortable, because genuine love never asks you to surrender your dignity, your values, or your identity. It encourages you to become the fullest expression of who you truly are. And once you understand that love should never require the loss of yourself, you become ready for an even greater act of courage, breaking the generational patterns that have quietly shaped lives for far too long. Breaking free from unhealthy patterns is one of the most difficult things a person can do because those patterns often feel normal. They have been repeated for years, sometimes for generations, until no one even questions them anymore. A child grows up watching the same arguments, the same fears, the same ways of handling disappointment, and slowly begins believing that this is simply how life works. But every pattern, no matter how old, was once created by someone's decision. And every pattern can be ended by someone's courage. Many people inherit more than their family's name. They inherit ways of thinking. They inherit beliefs about success, failure, relationships, money, trust, and even their own worth. Some inherit confidence and resilience. Others inherit fear, anger, constant criticism, emotional silence, or the belief that love must always come with sacrifice. These patterns are rarely passed on because people want to cause harm. Most of the time, they are passed on unconsciously. People give what they themselves received. Imagine a river flowing through a valley for hundreds of years. It follows the same path because it has never known another direction. Every generation simply watches the water and assumes this course can never change. But one person decides to dig a new channel. At first, it seems impossible. The old current keeps pulling everything back. The work is slow, exhausting, and often lonely. Yet little by little, the water begins flowing in a different direction. The same is true of your life. Changing a generational pattern feels uncomfortable because your mind naturally returns to what is familiar, even when the familiar is unhealthy. If criticism has always been the language of your family, kindness may feel unnatural. If fear has always guided decisions, courage may feel dangerous. If emotional distance has always existed, genuine vulnerability may feel impossible. Growth often feels strange before it feels natural. This is why so many people repeat the very behaviors they once promised they would never become. They do not choose those habits consciously. They simply never stop long enough to question them. Awareness is where freedom begins. The moment you notice a destructive pattern, you gain the opportunity to make a different choice. Instead of responding with anger, you choose patience. Instead of controlling others through fear or guilt, you choose honest communication. Instead of allowing old wounds to define every relationship, you begin healing them with responsibility and compassion. These small decisions may seem insignificant, but repeated consistently, they create an entirely different future. Breaking unhealthy patterns does not require blaming your family. Blame keeps you tied to the past. Understanding allows you to move beyond it. You can acknowledge that someone passed on harmful behaviors without carrying hatred toward them. They may have acted from pain they never learned to heal. Your responsibility is not to repeat that pain. Your responsibility is to end it. That may require creating distance for a season, not because distance itself is the goal, but because healing sometimes needs space. Space allows you to see your life without constant pressure. It gives you room to question old beliefs, develop healthier habits, and rebuild your identity on principles you have consciously chosen instead of unconsciously inherited. The strongest people are not those who pretend the past never happened. They are the ones who refuse to let the past become someone else's future. When you choose awareness over habit, wisdom over reaction, and responsibility over repetition, you become the turning point that changes the direction of an entire generation. Because true evolution is not escaping your family's story. It is having the courage to rewrite the parts that no longer deserve to be passed on. And once you break the patterns that kept you bound, you finally create the silence needed to hear something you may have never truly listened to before, your own authentic voice. After breaking old patterns, something unexpected often happens. For the first time in your life, there is silence. No constant opinions telling you who you should become. No endless expectations pulling your attention in different directions. No familiar voices shaping every decision before you have the chance to make it yourself. At first, that silence can feel uncomfortable. Many people mistake it for loneliness. But there is a profound difference between being alone and finally having the space to hear your own thoughts. Most people have spent so much of their lives reacting to the expectations of others that they have never truly asked themselves what they believe. Their days are filled with noise, conversations, responsibilities, social media, opinions, and endless distractions. In all that noise, the quiet voice of their own conscience slowly disappears. Imagine standing beside a roaring waterfall. The sound is so overwhelming that you cannot hear someone speaking only a few feet away. The voice is there, but it is drowned out by the noise. Your inner wisdom works the same way. It has always been present. It is simply difficult to hear when life is filled with constant pressure and expectation. This is why moments of healthy solitude are so valuable. Solitude is not about escaping people forever. It is about creating enough distance to think clearly. It gives you the opportunity to examine your beliefs, your goals, your fears, and your values without immediately filtering them through someone else's approval. Many people fear solitude because it forces them to meet themselves without distraction. There are no roles to perform, no image to protect, no audience to impress. Only the truth of who they are. That truth can be uncomfortable, but it is also where transformation begins. When you spend time alone with honesty, you begin asking different questions. What kind of person do I want to become? Which values truly belong to me? What dreams have I ignored because they did not fit someone else's expectations? These questions cannot be answered in a crowded room. They require stillness. They require reflection. They require courage. Some of the greatest decisions in life are not made during moments of excitement. They are made during quiet moments when the mind is finally free from constant influence. In that silence, your priorities become clearer. You stop confusing popularity with purpose. You stop chasing approval and begin pursuing meaning. Of course, solitude should not become isolation. Human beings need healthy relationships, love and community. The goal is not to withdraw from the world forever. The goal is to become strong enough within yourself that your relationships become choices rather than emotional necessities. When you learn to enjoy your own company, something remarkable happens. You become less desperate for validation, less afraid of rejection, less willing to betray your values just to avoid being alone. Your peace no longer depends on constant approval because you have learned how to create stability from within. This is where emotional independence is born, not through pride, not through coldness, but through self-understanding. The person who knows who they are cannot be easily manipulated by every opinion they hear. They listen with wisdom, consider advice with humility, but make decisions according to principles instead of pressure. Distance, when used wisely, creates this clarity. It allows you to return to relationships with greater maturity, stronger boundaries, and a deeper understanding of yourself. Or, if some relationships remain unhealthy, it gives you the strength to move forward without hatred or guilt. Because the greatest gift of healthy solitude is not escaping other people. It is finally meeting the person you were always meant to become. And once you can clearly hear your own voice, you are ready for the next stage of growth, learning that forgiveness can set your heart free, even when healthy boundaries still remain. After discovering your own voice, one final burden often remains hidden deep within the heart: resentment. Many people believe that healing requires pretending nothing happened or returning to the same relationship exactly as it was before. But forgiveness and reconciliation are not always the same thing. Forgiveness is an inner decision. Trust is rebuilt through consistent actions. Sometimes they happen together, sometimes they do not. Holding on to anger may feel like strength, but over time it becomes another chain. Every painful memory replayed over and over continues to give the past authority over the present. The people who hurt you may no longer control your life, yet resentment quietly continues their work from within. Forgiveness does not excuse harmful behavior. It simply refuses to let that behavior define the rest of your life. There are relationships that can heal through honesty, accountability, and genuine change. Those relationships deserve patience and wisdom. But there are also situations where the healthiest choice is to forgive without returning to the same patterns. Creating boundaries is not an act of hatred. It is often an act of self-respect. You can wish someone peace while protecting your own. You can release bitterness without reopening every closed door. True maturity is learning that compassion does not require unlimited access to your life. The strongest people are not those who carry resentment forever. They are the ones who learn from the pain, release its emotional weight, and continue building a life guided by wisdom instead of wounded pride. Because forgiveness sets your heart free, while healthy boundaries protect the peace you fought so hard to find. And once your heart is no longer carrying the weight of yesterday, you are finally ready for the highest stage of evolution. Not simply creating distance from others, but living each day according to your own principles, with wisdom, integrity, and inner freedom. In the end, the highest level of evolution is not measured by how far you distance yourself from your family. It is measured by the person you become because of the choices you make. Distance, if it is ever necessary, is only a tool. Growth is the destination. Many people believe freedom means escaping everyone who has hurt them. But if anger, bitterness, or the need to prove something still controls your heart, then you have only changed your surroundings, not yourself. Real evolution begins when your identity is no longer defined by your past. You stop blaming, you stop pretending, you stop living to satisfy expectations that no longer align with your values. Instead, you choose integrity over approval, wisdom over reaction, and purpose over comfort. Whether your relationships with your family eventually become stronger or remain distant, your success should never be measured by separation alone. It should be measured by your ability to live with honesty, emotional maturity, self-respect, and compassion. The greatest victory is not proving that others were wrong. It is proving to yourself that your pain did not turn you into someone who repeats the same patterns. Carry forward the love that strengthened you. Leave behind the habits that weakened you. Build relationships based on respect rather than fear, understanding rather than control, and freedom rather than guilt, because the goal of personal growth is never to become cold or detached from the world. It is to become so grounded in your principles that no relationship can force you to betray your character. When that happens, whether people stay, leave, change, or remain the same, your peace no longer depends on them. It comes from within. And that is the highest form of evolution. Not walking away from people, but walking faithfully toward the person you were always meant to become.